Hi, everybody. It's Matt Hawes of The Happy Show and of Comics Unlimited, located in the Big E2 Flea Market in Evansville, Indiana. This is a video to explain why I made a documentary on Corey Feldman. Now, people who have followed my video through the past year have seen me do a few Corey Feldman related videos, which was interesting because I'm not particularly I'm not as great as fan, but I'm also not really his detractor in the greatest sense. I've learned some things over this last year that I will talk about that got me interested in doing the documentary and wanting to show basically all sides of Corey Feldman. I don't have nothing personal against the guy, and frankly, don't have a lot of strong feelings about him in the strictest sense. But there was a lot that I, learned about him. I mean, there's a number of things I already knew through the years, but more stuff that over the last number of months and such that I thought, this would be kind of interesting to put everything in context for people, and I'll explain that here in a moment. First, I want to explain for people who are watching this who may be discovering my channel and may watch this video because they've seen the Corey Feldman documentary such, who I am. I've been on YouTube since almost the beginning of YouTube from 2006. I started because I had a public access television show, not to be confused with PBS. Public access, a lot of people in different areas will understand, is a local access channel provided by the cable companies where you can put on shows and such like that. And so I had a public access show called The Happy Show, and it was a silly kind of variety show, locally produced with no budget really. It wasn't meant to be profitable because there was no money being made. Public access is not a commercial endeavor. And so, anyway, that's when I was really starting to get more and more into the video production and editing of stuff. I'm actually a lifelong comic book fan, and I was a one-time collector, but I became a dealer, a vendor, a retailer back in 1996. I started actually selling before that in the early 90s, but I opened a shop in 1996 and I had it for 18 and a half years. Decided to close it because it was still doing well, but I wanted to have more freedom. It was pretty much a one-man operation, even though it was doing well. I didn't want to hire the staff and stuff. I kept it, pretty simple budget, and realized, I could do shows, set up at flea markets, conventions, and such like that, and still maintain the same kind of take-home pay, so to speak, and have more freedom and no overhead, or not no overhead, but not the same kind of overhead. Anyway, so I'm just giving you this as a little bit of background so you understand who I am and where I'm coming from. Again, this is stuff that I've discussed over the years on this channel, and started on YouTube in 2006. I was putting up segments, originally segments, because in those days you couldn't put long form videos from The Happy Show. Then eventually would do the full episodes of The Happy Show. I also did video vlogs, and did those for many years. Had built a following back in the heyday, at the height of things for me on YouTube. I had a very good following, an international following, in fact, people who was watching the Happy Show and such. But then once I stopped production of the Happy Show in 2010, at least properly doing the show, I still would upload segments that and such, and I'd go back and do a best of series called the Happy Show Hour of Fun. And whenever I did all that, uh, I mean, I still would be doing Happy Show content, strictly speaking. I also do other things that interest me. I like writing music, but I can't actually perform, and I can't really sing. You don't want to have me truly try to sing. I've done it on a Happy Show, but that was more silly. So I do use the dreaded AI to assist on, help me fully realize my songs, but they are my songs, uh, my words and such, and even my melodies, because it's now possible to control that even. So in most cases, I can even control the melody, or do control on that. Anyway, so I know a lot of you are watching for the Corey, for me to talk about Corey Feldman, or wonder why am I hearing this again. I just want to introduce myself to people who might be new to the channel, and maybe some of you will be kind enough to stick around and subscribe. I don't intend for this to be a Corey Feldman channel. In fact, I wasn't going to really do too much more Corey Feldman content on this channel. But I decided I wanted to do this documentary, and I didn't know what I was getting myself in for, because I know I have done documentaries on this channel. You'll see I've done a Beatles Paul is Dead hoax, which has to do with this whole thing about where Paul supposedly died back in the 60s and all that. And I was always fascinated with that. That, in a weird way, got me into the Beatles music really more seriously back when I was a teenager. Um, I'm not one of these people who believe in the law of conspiracies in general, and certainly didn't really believe that one. But I made this documentary, and it's gotten a number of views. I put it up at that in 2010, and it got eventually taken down, unfortunately, for copyright states strikes. Not really a strike, but anyway, it got taken down, and I had to refashion it later on. I decided about 10 years after that that I was going to put it back up in 2020 with a re-edit to try and see what I could do to get around the copyright nonsense, because I feel that it was a transformative work with fair usage and such like that. But anyway, my point is, and that video still has maintained and stayed on this channel since, and it's one of my more popular videos. And then I've also done a video on Stan Lee that was a documentary. I'm bringing this up because these are different projects that are kind of similar to the way I tackled the Corey Feldman documentary, because basically in all these cases, in these three particular projects I've done, I do try to edit in such a way that it'll be as objective as possible. Even the most objective documentary, you still got it filtered through the lenses of the editor and the director. In the case, this editor, director, producer, everything on this version of it, and in those other projects. So, but I still try to present things as objectionable as objective as possible. So basically people can come to their own conclusions. I try to have some balance in there, like if another person in the documentary contradicts something, then the other person is the main subject of that documentary. I don't try to hide the one person was contradictory more than another person. I just put what I have out there on display, basically, and then you can decide who's right and who's wrong and that sort of thing. I had done a prior video that wasn't a documentary, but was a special video I made about Bob Feldman, the father of Corey Feldman. And that one I made because I don't like misinformation. I hate this whole age where so many things are out there that's wrong and nobody tries to correct it. Or if they do, it just gets into this mess where even legitimate news sites will report stuff because they can't be bothered to research things properly. Bob Feldman passed away, apparently a few years ago, according to Scott Schwartz, the actor that's featured in the Corey Feldman documentary I'd done. And I've contacted him. I didn't have original footage that I used, video footage I used of him, but I did contact Scott Schwartz, and he confirmed to me Bob Feldman, Corey's father, did pass away a few years ago. But even before he passed away, another Bob Feldman had passed away, who was a musician from New York, and about the same age, maybe a little older than Corey's dad. And a lot of obituaries and such would confuse the two, and would report that this guy who was part of the group that wrote "I Want Candy" and a bunch of other 1960s hits was Corey Feldman's father, when he in fact was not. And as far as I know, there was no relation whatsoever between the two. So that was a video I made, but again, I didn't do it as a documentary. But then I thought, I'm going to do this documentary because there's so many videos that talk about Corey. Some of them are hit pieces, to be honest, on them. Some of them aren't. Some of them just want to reveal the truth behind some of the stuff he's said and done. And I wanted to do a balance of, like, okay, I wanted to put, again, straightforward, because I wanted to have that out there for people to use as reference, honestly, to kind of see what the story is. And with my documentaries, I usually let the people who are the subject of the documentary tell their own story, in a sense, through my editing. I control the narrative and such through my editing, but I'm using various sources. Amelia, it's nonprofit. I don't make money off this. I don't monetize these videos intentionally for a reason, because even if I think I get tons of views, hopefully on some stuff, and the Beatles, the Stanley, and so far even these Corey docs are getting a pretty good amount. They do get considerable amount of views, but I admittedly, don't get the clearances on everything possible because it's hard to track all that stuff down. But I still think I fall within fair usage on the originals. Raw footage I use that I edit into my videos, and I do it in a transformative manner with the way I edit the stuff and all that. And so anyway, my point is that um, it does take a bit of work, and I do, but I also want to use it. The reason I do it is I want to use these pieces of interviews and such to kind of shape a story, a narrative again, and basically let the participants in the story speak for themselves. And that's how I like to present the stuff, because then it's not me changing what they've said. I mean, yes, I'm editing it, but I'm placing it, but they did say what they said, and I try not to mess with that where it's misleading. But I do want to illustrate a point whenever I, assemble it together. And it takes a lot of time, but let me go ahead and explain real quick about my whole situation. Like, what is my position on Corey Feldman? Why am I even involved in all this? And again, it's really just more just fascinated by it as a observer, like an independent observer of some sort. And I have followed different people, podcasts and such through YouTube that discuss Corey on a regular basis and such. There's a whole bunch of Back to the Sofa and Jim and Them, Drew Lane. Then there was the stuff like Justin Hawkins, who has mentioned Corey. There's Dances with Ghosts, if I got his name right. There's a whole bunch of these people. There's from Anthony Opie, Opie and Anthony. Excuse me. I'm tired. I just actually worked today, so excuse me if I kind of screw this up here and there. Anthony and Opie, right? So the DJ's Anthony from Anthony Opie, Anthony Cumia. Am I saying his name right? He also has taken to showing clips of Corey. A lot of people have done this, and it's been going on for many years. And I've gotten interested through those, but that's not where it began for me. I began uh, frankly, because of some videos from not even any of these people I named. There was a guy who was, showed footage of Corey Feldman in concert and the mishaps that happened during his concert. And that, but before that, back when I was growing up and such, I was a fan of the movies that Corey had done. He has unquestionably made a lot of good movies. When he was a young man, a youngster and all that. Despite what people feel about Corey Feldman, I think he was a decent child actor. I think he did a lot of really good movies. Unquestionably, did a lot of classic movies. Goonies, Gremlins, Lost Boys, Stand by Me. I think all these are unquestionably classic movies. They're definitely defined movies that define that era in the 80s, and he was one of the main child actors of that period. Typically, especially during that period, as an ensemble piece. He was one of the actors. I, for various reasons, didn't really watch too much of the two Corey stuff, because by the time those movies are coming out, I'm actually a little older than Corey. Not much older, but a little bit older. And they were more of a thing for the teenage girls or the preteen girls that were to watch. So License to Drive and the other movies that he started making with Corey didn't have any particular interest to me by that point in his career. And then, of course, he went through all the stuff with the drug abuse and all this other stuff that happened, for a few years there. So to me, Corey Feldman was just somebody who acted in some movies that I liked back in the day, and didn't think too much of them one way or another. I just remembered him fondly via those movies that I was interested in. And so basically around, I guess it was around 2018 when he was doing the Me Too, when the Me Too movement was a thing, and he came out about the child abuse thing, and I didn't know a lot about Corey again, other than what most people knew of him, the general public, that is. And so I remember he was going on about the child abuse, which didn't sound like a bad thing for him to be tackling. He seemed to be on the right side of it, from what I could tell. I didn't, I didn't follow the two Corey's the reality show. I knew about it. I never followed it. And when he passed away, he did a choreography, his book, his autobiography book, but mostly deals with Corey Haim. I never listened to it. I never bought it, never read it, nothing. Like I said, he was just somebody in the back of my mind, so to speak. And then that 2018, like I said, happened, and then I thought, oh, okay. And once again, I didn't think anything bad about him. In fact, like a lot of people, if you just take it at face value, you see him championing the cause against child abuse. I mean, who's going to be against that, right? I didn't know some of the other details behind a lot of that, and honestly, I don't think it's that. Even to this day, that I mean, I think he's does want to stop that on some level. I mean, who wouldn't it? But it may not admittedly be as clear cut that his motives on some things, and that's where I'm headed. As far as why I started to realize the broader picture. So that happened, like I said. And then then I heard about the fiasco when he tried to premiere his documentary in 2020. But again, didn't think much of it. This is just something you generally hear in the entertainment news. And for me, I was like most people in the mainstream audience, where yeah, I was aware of it on some level, but I didn't look into it much, and didn't feel a need to. Really, it wasn't until a few 2 3 years ago. I don't even remember the exact length of time, but like I said, I found the video where somebody's just talking about Corey going on stage. It was after the whole Corey Feldman's Angels thing, and that's another thing. Yes, I was aware, like a lot of people, about the Corey Feldman's Today Show appearance and all that, and I realized he was like becoming this guy that people kind of mocked because, frankly, nothing against Corey, but he's not a talented singer. He's not a talented musician. He can dance decently, but not to the level that he thinks he can. And again, I'm not trying to slam him. I'm just saying, honestly, my view on that. And so, of course, I watched, like with others, the reason why that thing became the views, and not necessarily the view amounts, like the amount of views he wants to say it was, but the reason it did blow up, it blew up as a meme because people were laughing at it. I'm sorry, but to Corey and his fans, but that's the truth. He was, people got a kick out of it because it was one of those cringe things that's so bad it's good. I kind of will put it in that group, that category. I told you I'm tired. That category, because, and I am a guy who likes a lot of the stuff that ironic enjoyment that people like. The same people who like Mystery Science Theater 3000 because they run bad movies. It's not really that you like the bad movie. You actually have enjoyment. Like even Corey here, he's giving us entertainment value. It's just not in the form that he wants it to be in. And so anyway, my point is, so I'm watching Corey Feldman's videos like that through the years, and then I, like I said, get on somebody who actually shows one of these deals where Corey goes on stage and has a meltdown. And again, it wasn't even one of the made podcasts that a lot of people tune into now. It was just some general YouTuber who actually went himself and filmed. Him and his buddy went and filmed. I wish I could remember the guy's name, but he was a YouTuber, and they filmed the stage performance themselves. It was them personally in the audience, and he went there as a fan of Corey's, in the sense of one of these ironic fans. He went there to see a shit show, bluntly, and Corey gave it. It was probably more than he bargained for in some ways. So I was amused by that, entertained by that, and since I kind of have a appreciation for for that kind of ironic entertainment, I went ahead and checked out more videos. So ultimately, I think I came. Well, I know I saw Justin Hawkins' video, and then I think I saw maybe Back to the Sofa guys, and then I found Jim and them. Okay, and others people. I didn't realize when I found Jim and them they were part of the Illuminati. That's just a joke there for you Wolfpackers. Um, but so I got amused, and be honest with you, one thing that I'm going to just mention about Jim and them in particular is that one thing that stood out to me is Jim responds, I guess he still does, to all the comments pretty much on his video, on their video. And so I thought, oh, cool. So admittedly, when you got somebody who's more interactive, you want to go ahead and hang out more. So I start watching more of their videos more regularly, honestly, because, well, he's interacting. I want to see what they have to say and such. And and the guys over at Back to the Sofa also are interactive, but not to that level. And so I just thought, okay, so I just got more and more where I watch these guys' videos, and then I realized Corey, I started hearing more about the Corey's Angels stuff, and I realized he's not quite a good guy, really. And I'm not trying to impugn his honor or anything. I'm not out there to try and attack him. I'm not at all. But I'm just saying, acknowledging and giving my viewpoint on what I was seeing. I was thinking there's more to this, but by the same token, I won't say I think he's like a completely bad guy or a villain or whatever. He can be the bad guy like anybody can at times, and he has been, I think. But I also don't think he's entirely this totally evil, rotten person. I think he does a lot of things badly and wrongly, but I also think he has been wronged at times. Maybe not like he thinks. He does seem to have a grand conspiracy theory about things. I mean, when you think that the whole deal with COVID was invented to stop you from showing a documentary, when you truly seem to suggest that, and when you suggest the Illuminati is behind some podcast just because they don't put you in the most positive light, I mean, I'd say, and this sounds like I'm making an attack or a joke. I'm not. I think Corey, if you ever see this, and Corey fans, please, I'm not trying to be insulting here. I really think you need help. I mean, I'm not saying that mockingly. I really think you need some help because there is some level of delusion there. There is some level of paranoia there. There just is. And I think anybody who looks objectively can see that. And again, this ain't an attack. I'm not saying this to be smart ass or nothing. I've now watched many hours of video footage, many interviews with you. I've seen a lot of this stuff, man, and or not read your book, but I listened to your book on audio book and everything else. I've absorbed a lot of Corey, some more than I ever wanted to the last few months. Because when I got this fascination to do this, I start seeing, like what different ex-angels have said, and what Scott Schwartz from the Christmas Story, who was a childhood friend of Corey Haim and Ann Feldman, I suppose, for a period. When I start seeing these stories and all this and other people and connecting some dots and seeing the fuller picture, I thought, man, this is interesting. And again, there's videos out there where people would concentrate on different things, like how he was with the Wolfpack, how he is with the Angels, Corey Angels, how he was with about Corey Haim, blah blah blah. So that's when I thought I want to do a documentary on this. I knew I was getting myself in for a lot of work, just didn't realize how much. Because I'm thinking, really, I'm not that freaking passionate as it may sound about doing a Corey doc, but yet there was still just this creative urge in me to do it, and because it is part of creativeness and fascination. I mean, the fascination coupled with my wanting to be creative, I thought, yeah, let's do a doc. And then I started getting acquiring all the footage, the photos, blah blah blah, and then I started to assemble it together, and here's the thing: when you make a documentary like that, you got to go through every bit of footage that you've acquired to find those moments you want to edit and such. And so that means I have to go through hours and hours. I thought I might do this in a couple weeks. It turned out to be almost half a year. And I even had to stop myself at some point and said, listen, I just gotta, I mean, Corey, of course, is still doing things. They start doing dancing with the stars, and he had this Jamie Kennedy interview just as I was wrapping up things. I was like, oh, did I include this? And I'm so glad about the Jamie Kennedy interview I did, because I almost didn't save that. And some of you out there might know that video got taken down. And then another version got put up that was edited, which edited like 20 minutes. And then that video got taken down. And so if I hadn't grabbed it when I did, I would have missed out on that. And oh my God, is it kooky? There's you can see certain reasons why. That was the one. That's the one interview where he does say 2020 in 2020 the COVID deals happen, and seriously seems to suggest that was done to stop him. The whole nation shutting down for COVID was somehow just to stop him from putting out his documentary on Corey Haim and such. He says it with a straight face, really, and there's other stuff in there, as a lot of people who have seen it now know, and people who've watched the documentary seen clips of. And so yeah, I was like, okay, glad I did catch that one. But anyway, my point is, I try to be as what's the word I'm looking for? As thorough as I could, perhaps, is what I'm trying to say here. As thorough as I could, as up to this present day, with going back to his history. I want to give a fair look and examination of his childhood. I do believe he had a sad upbringing. I think, like a lot of things, maybe he exaggerates some things here and there. But his dad doesn't seem like he was the nicest guy, but he also doesn't seem like he's the ogre that sometimes Corey wants to present him as. Because in one breath, Corey says his dad was cool and he lived with him and his dad let him do a lot of things his mom wouldn't do. But in other times, he acts like his dad was a jerk and stuff. I think, frankly, his dad could be a jerk. I've watched the Howard Stern interview. That's, of course, included my doc and everything. That's one of the more extensive pieces that you watch with Bob Feldman that's out there. And yeah, Bob has a lot of smug, kind of rotten qualities that, frankly, is passed on to his son. when you really look at this, you can say, well, Corey, I agree with you. Your dad could be a jerk, it sounds like, but those are traits he seems to have passed on to you. And that doesn't make it right, but I'm saying you get fuller understanding, okay, this is where some of that comes from. I don't have any video footage. I'm not aware of any that has to do with Sheila, his mother. But I've never heard anybody really say too much to deny his mother. Of course, has tried to say she wasn't as abusive as he says. But I haven't really heard too much else from anyone else to kind of suggest that he's wrong about some of that. So I think he had some level of abuse. I don't with his parents. I don't question that. I just do question to what extremes. Because even in the interview he does with Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins, he makes some comment about, I was tied to a cage. Well, literally it was the top of my bunk and blah blah blah, but it was like a cage. And it's like, okay. Don't get me wrong. What if he was tied to a bed or whatever? That's rotten too. But it's just this exaggeration of things. That's bad enough. You don't have to exaggerate it further and act like you're locked in a cage. But that's my point. Is like, some stuff there may be a grain of truth to, but you have to take it with a grain of salt. And so and then there's other things where, like, I don't think it's really questioned that he had some. Let me put it this way: he had the older guys who were messing with him when he was a teenager, and that's not right, no matter what. But listening to the stories, it's like, on one time he says it was consensual, another time he says it's while he was asleep. And then another time he says, well, it was all, and there were several times, like with John Grisham, to go ahead and name on this, because it's a name he's put out there. He talks about, that guy was his dad hired John Grisham as the assistant to Corey when Corey was a teenager, around 15 or so years old. And right before the emancipation. In fact, this guy encouraged Corey to get the emancipation from his father and his mother. And but the parents, if you've watched the documentary or if you know anything about Corey was living with his father at this point, and the parents were divorced. He talks about Grisham, and like I said, at one point he says he had a consensual relationship, sexual relationship with him. But then later on, he says the guy molested him while he was sleeping, and he also says it's happened several times. And again, does it make it right? No, it doesn't make it right anymore. It makes it right when Corey tries to say with Dominic Braja, he tries to claim that there was a consensual relationship between, Corey Haim and Dominic Braja, even if there was. And I do think there's reason to question if it was consensual. But even if there was, it's no more right in that case than it would be in Corey's case. A full-grown adult shouldn't be messing with a teenage child, no matter what, like that. But Corey does tend to go back and rewrite things, and he even talks about later on with statutory abuse with Ginger Lynn, the actress, the porn actress Ginger Lynn. He tells his tale of that, which he saw several times. He brags about it on Howard Stern in 1992, which means he was 21 years old when he was bragging about when he was 15 years old making out with her. So by 21, he's still bragging about it. But then later on, he wants to act like it was he was a statutory thing, which legally it was, okay. But what I'm saying is, and again, it doesn't make it right that she no more right for a woman than a man to do it or whatever. But you question, like, okay, some of the things, like how much Corey's involvement was, right or wrong, in the situation. And there's things that like that I discovered while watching this. There's the deal with with Corey Feldman, which Corey Feldman, to my knowledge and from all I've looked at and such, and I've watched enough now, never ever named Charlie Sheen publicly, of course. And most people that aren't directly connected to Corey Feldman and still maintain some level of friendship with him, none of them seem to. Nobody else has really said that Charlie Sheen had done it. The people that did it in the My Truth documentary, they were all pretty close friends to Corey Feldman to that day, and Corey Haim had already passed. And so they're the only other ones that seem to kind of suggest, and they pretty much admit that it's Feldman they heard it from, except for I think the producer of Corey Feldman and Corey, or not producer, the manager, excuse me, the manager, their former manager, I think was one that said that, act like he, or says he got it from the information from Corey Haim too. But he said, if I hadn't heard it from Corey Feldman all this time, I don't know if I would have believed it. So I don't necessarily know if that guy is credible. And so in other words, all we really have to go by is what Corey Feldman has said and what was said in the National Enquirer, column or whatever, article that came out that was written by Dominic Braja, who even Feldman himself acknowledges now did abuse Corey Haim. So, Judy Haim and I think her name's Carrie Haim, his sister, they both say it was Dominic, and that's what they were told by Corey Haim. And Corey Feldman, like I said, will even acknowledge that, but he tries to backpedal and defend himself in the interview for setting up the two, Corey Haim with Dominic Braja, and for not outing Braja until after he passed on. And then there's this stuff with Corey Feldman having known, like say knew about, but didn't want to name names, that sort of thing, and he still maintained friendships with Dominic Braja, gave him work and everything else. There's a lot of this stuff that came out, and so that, and all of this was mentioned in a documentary. So I'm really kind of just going over old stuff. If you've watched that documentary, if you haven't, by the way, if you've been watching this video and you're still listening and you're wondering what is all this about, well, check out the Corey's story, part 1 and 2. They're 2-hour length videos each, so 4 hours total, basically. And I'll leave links in the description to this video here so you can check them out if you don't know what I'm talking about. I think you'll find them fascinating. It is a long watch. Trust me, it was a lot to edit. So maybe I could cut it back a little bit more, but I want it to be as thorough as I could, and there is some fun bits I want to throw in there just because, like when the bit where Drew Barrymore is interviewing Corey Feldman, and she says something like, "One thing I've always liked about you, Corey," I'm paraphrasing. "One thing I've always liked about you is your lack of ego." Okay, so if there's a bias in my editing, I confess that's one of them, because what I did, of course, is follow a collage of him going on about how great he is and stuff like that. It's great things he did and the record breaking stuff and blah blah blah. Because there's just sometimes you just can't help it. I mean, when I saw that her say that on that clip, I was like, how can I not include, counter that with all this other stuff? But Scott Schwartz is, Corey Haim's one time buddy, or, when he was live, he had a lot of interesting things to say about Feldman, especially, but about Corey Haim and such. So I wanted to include his stuff as well. Um, there's stuff, like, on the fairness, there's a few things that he said that contradicts stuff that he said in other interviews, and I presented that just like I presented Corey Feldman contradicting himself. Again, this is not a hit piece. This documentary was not meant to be at all a hit piece on Corey Feldman. It really was an examination of what happened through the course of his life up to now, and especially in particular these controversies. I didn't go over every single thing. I didn't mention his first wife. I didn't really go into really his wives. I didn't have much to do with, like, I didn't want to say much about, Zen, his son, except for that I did have the bit in there about how Zen was handled whenever the Corey's Angels parties were going on. I said stuff like that, but as thorough as I was wanting it to be more about the controversies and career and such. I wasn't so much of the personal life. That's why I don't go into like his grandfather or some stuff like that. I want to keep it focused on the life of Corey Feldman, but more the public life, really, for the most part, except for the behind the scenes stuff that had to do with his public life. Like the stuff with the Corey's Angels and the controversies behind that, and the Wolfpack stuff and all that. So anyway, I'm sorry if this is a rambling vlog. A lot of these vlogs I make recently, I don't want to frankly edit, and I just so it's pretty much me just doing this stream of thought discussions with you guys through the video here. But I want to explain this because, as far as the Wolfpack stuff, I hope that anybody realizes there's not really a wolf pack. It's Bobby Wolf, which was this guy who was interviewing a bunch of ex Corey's Angels and such like that, who had a story to tell, and he wanted to get the word out there, and he puts these videos out there. Corey Feldman, of course, doesn't like it because it is negative towards him, because, well, if what these ladies say is true, sure, it's going to be negative. And so and then there are people that sometimes viewers take it upon themselves. Judy Hayne might be discussing with Bobby Wolf and with the ex-Angels about this stuff, and other people feel, well, darn it, this ain't right, and so they decide to troll Corey Feldman because they think he deserves some form of payback or what have you. But as far as I know, none of that was orchestrated from any evidence I've seen by these other people. If people who watch videos like mine or whatever, God forbid that they